Every week, maybe every day, people ask me what separates those that succeed from those that don't succeed. And I've mentioned this before, but I would highly recommend you read a book, Release Your Brakes by Jim Newman. At the core of most success is self-image. And that book is tremendously helpful in understanding the limitations you have, how they occurred, how to use affirmations, and how to break through your comfort zones, which most people, that's what holds them back, is that they have limiting beliefs, they're afraid to do things. So how do you get beyond that? Great book. But beyond that, it's taking action. Almost taking action when you're not ready to take action. You're never prepared perfectly. Yes, you want to prepare. Yes, you want to plan. All of those things are important. But at some point, you've got to pull the trigger and just move forward. And a great example of that happened this past week with a person named Maxine in France. And Maxine had been making some progress, but albeit some pretty slow progress. He was in France, as I mentioned. He was thinking about moving to Haiti, which collectively we wondered why you would want to do that, based on what opportunities exist there and what you were trying to accomplish. So he rethought that, and he decided he wanted to go to Mexico. That's a big change when you sit in France. So he broke out of that comfort zone and he went and moved to Mexico. He ended up previously having weekly reports that didn't show that much progress. This week's weekly report showed that he had people in chairmans, 3 industry experts, lawyers, accountants, all of those people he had connected to this past week. And while he hadn't closed all of them, he had discussions with them. They were interested, and he's in the process of closing them. And these were high profile guys. They would make a great board, assuming that he brings all these guys on. So I asked him, he was in a group coaching setting, would you enlighten the group on what changed between previous weeks and this week's, where basically in, I think now 2 weeks, he will have closed his board, a pretty substantial accomplishment. And he said, I was just a madman on LinkedIn. I didn't get locked out, but I was just connecting like crazy, hundreds of connections a day, having those discussions, just working it. Was he ready for all those discussions? No, he wasn't ready for all those discussions. Did he jump in the deep end of the pool and take a leap of faith and do it? He absolutely did. And look at the results. So all of this process starts with a good idea, better first, different. But at the end of the day, even though it'll terrify you oftentimes to make cold calls and warm calls, which is what I would highly recommend, and through LinkedIn, you can essentially move the cold calling to a warm call through some of the strategies we've talked about. If you do that, if you take action, the more you do of that, the better your results will be. Assuming you're any good on a phone and in your writing. But when I talk to people that say things aren't happening quickly enough, I often hear, well, I sent 10 connection requests this past week, as opposed to sending 500 a week. This is absolutely a numbers game. It's absolutely, as Dan and I have said over and over again, about kissing a lot of frogs and then seeing what the results are and adjusting. I've got another mentee, Chris, who is in a good space, sharp guy. He ended up having about a 10% connection rate with his LinkedIn connections sent. So we took a look at that and we said, okay, I think, this is me talking, that your problem is your profile. When you look at what you asked in your messages and they look at your profile, there's a disconnect there. So he was getting about a 10% connection request. We changed the profile. You don't want to change too many things because then you don't know what worked and what didn't work. And his next batch, he got a 30% connection rate, or 3 times the results. So all about taking action, all about working the beginning of the process. And I don't know of a better process than LinkedIn for making connections, building board members, finding accountants and lawyers, finding acquisitions on LinkedIn as well. So use the best tool that's out there, and in my opinion, it's LinkedIn.